Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. This is the South Coast Air Quality Management District Hearing Board. And today we have on the agenda three items. The first one is the consent calendar, on consent calendar for Beta Offshore Operating LLC, case number 5855-7 on a status report. And we're going to take that last. The first item that we will be taking will be the County of San Bernardino Fleet Management, case number 6070-12 for a regular variance, rule number 203. And then thereafter, we will take Monarch Orange Crematory, case number 6254-1, and that's for an emergency variance regarding rules 203 and 1147. So with that, let's start with San Bernardino. And who is here on behalf of San Bernardino?
Good morning. My name is Lauren Doucette. Lauren, Lauren, Doucette, Doucette, and I'm the Regulatory Environmental Specialist for the County of San Bernardino. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Lauren. And on behalf of the district?
Good morning, Mary Reichert, on behalf of the Executive Officer.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, I believe we have to mark some exhibits. Ready? Okay. Let's mark the birth of peak variance request. Behind that, there is a log, the IC engine operating log, and then the emissions. So let's just take it all together, and I'm just going to number that as number 2. Are you in concurrence, Madam Clerk? Okay. And then we have from the district, correct, the regular variance conditions, and that will be B as in boy. Did my homework. Okay. All right. We've seen this situation before. Unfortunately, for the people up in the San Bernardino Mountains, they're facing this once again. Not quite as bad, but still. All right. So with that, let's start with your opening statement, Ms. Doucette.
Good morning. Thank you so much. There's not too much to add from the interim variance, other than this generator has really truly only been used for emergency purposes at this point. It is still too dangerous for anybody to go up there to maintenance it or things of that nature. So it's really only running on emergency purposes. Everything is still the same. The power was turned, there's down power lines, but the power was turned back on. I believe Wednesday, February 24th, that power is still running. And again, only in emergency situations where that power is off is when this generator is running. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Reichert?
Thank you. Subject to testimony presented here today in compliance with the proposed conditions, the district is not opposed to the granting of this variance. I do have one small change to the conditions as pointed out by Ms. Doucette. In condition number 4, instead of interim, it should say regular. I missed that in making the changes to the conditions.
Okay. Ms. Doucette, do you have any witnesses that you wanted to present?
I do not. Thank you.
Ms. Reichert?
No witnesses, but if I could just ask a brief question of Ms. Doucette about the current operating hours. Has there been any changes to the operating hours since the last hearing? That was all. That was my only question. Okay. And for the record, she shook her head no.
No, the operating hours have not changed.
Okay. I just wanted to I thought that was what, from your opening, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Yeah, no, we have no witnesses. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Since we don't have any witnesses, and are there any members of the public that are online who want to be heard, Madam Clerk? Okay, I could not hear you.
Madam,
Condition number 3.
uh, Madam Chair, I do have some question for Ms. Doucette too.
Go right ahead.
To say at the last hearing, we heard that, access to the LPG situation was critical. It was very low. Have they since been able to get to the site and fill up the tank?
They have not.
They've not.
So, and they're actually running rather low. So there's not a safe route in order to get a propane truck up there right now. So it's still rather harsh conditions up there at the moment.
At the last hearing, actually, there was a February 6th, I think, to the 14th. The hours were 202.4. Since then, I think looks like it ran 1.9 hours since the last hearing.
Yes, so I think just for an emergency outing, so I'm assuming the power just had gone out for almost 2 hours, but there's been no, other than emergencies, there's been no maintenance.
So March 9th, there was a close 1.9 hours emergency operation.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I believe you were not here the last hearing, but I think the board did waive the fees,
Okay,
so that still holds, right?
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay. I did want to make note also that there is the executive order from the governor in reference to the fact that it is on an emergency status as of February of this year. So that's inclusive in the petition. I just wanted to make sure we call that out. And also, in regards to condition number 3, are we utilizing 131? What are we utilizing for that date?
I was hoping, yeah, I think January 31st. So just to give me time, right? So as the end of the year ends December 31st. So to give myself just a month to go through, check all the hours, calculate the emissions, and then send that in, if that is okay with the board.
I don't have a problem with that, but there's probably going to be more weather between now and then.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, because I think, right, the variance period would run, yeah, through December 31st.
Correct.
So that way I have the month to come back,
Okay.
calculate it all.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Doucette? Mr. Pearman?
Well, this is not a continuance, just pointed out I was not at the March 14th hearing, notwithstanding the minute order says I was. But I have read the minute order and the exhibits. Thank you.
Okay, we need to correct that then. All right, duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Pearman. All right, and Ms. Reichert, did you have any statement that you wanted to make? Does the board have any questions for Ms. Reichert? Okay.
No statement.
Okay. Yeah, yes, let's move the exhibits into evidence. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay. All right. So you have no other statement in regards to what we've already gone over?
I do not.
All right. And we've already asked the public if they had any questions. And there are no other questions in regards to the exhibits and or to the conditions. Is that correct, board members? Okay.
I'm just going to say, I don't think we need to add condition 4 because that's already been taken care of in the interim. We don't need to debate that or even add that. The board had agreed to waive all the fees previously.
Do we need to state it again, Madam Clerk?
I was just going to say the previous one only waived it as to the interim variance. So this one specifically notes it for the regular variance. So just to make it clear that it applies for the regular variance as well.
And I don't think it hurts to just have it on there. Okay, any other discussion on this? If not, all right, let's go ahead and to your closing statement, Ms. Doucette.
I have no further comments to add. Thank you so much.
Ms. Reichert.
Subject to compliance with the proposed conditions, the district is not opposed to the granting of this variance. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pearman.
On the record, are the conditions stipulated to?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from my board members for either party? Okay. And we've already gone through the closing statements, so we can go ahead and deliberate. Did you want to start, Mr. Balagopalan?
Sure. Again, I think they've been very diligent. They came for an ex parte and then came for an interim, and now for this regular variance. It's condition, as we heard before, it was beyond the control that due to the weather that the engine had to run, and they were actually not aware of it at that time. And again, as we heard from Ms. Doucette, the situation is still pretty bad, and they still cannot get to the site. I think we heard testimony that they have pretty low on fuel on propane at that site. So hopefully they have enough to run a few more emergency hours before they get there and fill it up. So I do believe they meet all the six necessary, we can make the necessary 6 findings. One, they're in violation of the permit condition 203B because they've exceeded the 200 hours. They're at over 200 hours now on the permit. That the non-compliance of the rule is beyond the reasonable control due to the severe weather we had there that the engine had to run. The closing of benefit would be with our corresponding closing or taking would be with our corresponding benefit, reducing a contaminant. The harm to the petitioner outweighs the benefit to air quality. So if the emission associated with the variance are eliminated as a result, denying the variance, there's minimal emissions. It's out in the remote area. There's hardly any impact to anybody in that area. The petitioner is given consideration to curtailing in lieu of as given consideration to curtailing operations. So they only will operate their engine just for emergency purposes. And they also have accepted a condition to test, limited to 1 hour a month for testing and maintenance. So, and also that they will reduce the excess emission because they're limited to 1 hour plus, except during, and through emergency, then they'll have to run over hours they need until they run out of fuel, or maybe they get it filled back up before that. And then they provided the emission factor they'll use to quantify emissions, so those emissions will be reported. So I think I'm not sure whether we're going to take up separately the fee issue, but it was decided last time that they under 3P, because it's an emergency, they don't have to pay the fees. And I'm sorry, it was a declared emergency by the governor. So the condition 3 is not to pay any fees, but they, however, have to report and record all excess emission and report it. So with that, I think they can they meet all the 6 findings necessary to grant the regular variance for starting today till the end of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Balagopalan. I fully agree with that. Knowing the area and having lived close by it, it's not just the fleets from the county of San Bernardino, it's any of the municipalities that are there. All the cities are having problems, as well as even the utility company can't even get up there to fix anything yet. It is still, as you mentioned, too dangerous to do so. And weather is still, coming in. So, I also agree that all of the 6 findings have been met, and you've done your due diligence by giving us all of the information in a very timely manner. We appreciate that. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I can make the motion. All right, so in the matter of County of San Bernardino Fleet Management at Bertha Peak, Big Bear, California, 92315 for facility number 72512, case number 607012. Regarding this regular variance, I move that we grant the regular variance based on the 6 findings as stated by Mr. Mohan Balagopalan. And we allow that regular variance starting today through, was it January 31st, 2025?
Sorry, it'll be December 31st,
December 31st,
2024.
2024, sorry. December 31st, 2024. That's it. We also need to add in there.
Yeah, you need the equipment.
Yes. For equipment number, emergency internal combustion engine F96434. And providing a variance for Rule 203B, condition number 5, permit to operate, the equipment stated previously.
Second.
And then there were no excess emissions. The cheat sheet. No.
Is he done with the motion?
1 second.
Oh,
Almost.
And then, as
He's
stated on
working.
exhibit number 2, no excess emissions reported.
Yes.
Actually, if I may just amend that, there will be excess emission when they operate it, but they don't have to pay for it. That's all. And the excess emission will be calculated as per the data they provided. So anytime the engine runs, there will be excess emission because it's over 200 hours. So just for the
So
record.
we'll add that in there. Yep, amend that motion.
Yeah,
So
just to
include
say that there will be excess emissions because they're
Okay.
over the 200
Testing.
hours.
With the excess emissions as estimated by the calculations
Right,
provided
yeah.
by
Mhm.
the petitioner.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second, Mr.
I'll
Ali?
second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought I heard you earlier. Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, Mr. Ali, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Abraham,
Aye.
Mr. Pearman,
Aye.
Mr. Bell Goplan?
Aye.
And I also vote aye, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much for coming in, appearing, and making sure we had all of that information. And
course.
good luck.
Thank you,
Good
thank you.
Okay. So we can move on to Monarch Orange Crematory. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Dr. Adrian?
Okay,
Don't start with that.
we won't.
Instead of like now.
Are we good to go, Rosalinda, or do we need one more item? Okay, okay. 5 minutes or so? Okay,
We could do the consent.
we can. Let's go ahead and do the consent while we're waiting for the other documents. I don't know whether she's going to be able to or not. Madam Clerk, did you want to go ahead and go along with us on the consent? Or did you want to? Mr. Rourke, you were not notified that you needed to present your exhibits to the board?
We brought the physical copies.
But we also have to have copies so we know what we're looking at.
Understood. Should pass out those
Ye-
copies to you.
Not yet.
She, I believe, has the paper copies. The electronic version was for Mr. Ali.
All right, is that it for exhibits? All right. Okay, all right, therefore, this is your only exhibit, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna mark that as number 1. The Monarch Orange Crematory Source Testing Project Timeline. And then from the district, we have the proposed emergency variance conditions. And we are going to be marking that as A. A as an apple. Is there anything else? I will in a second. I will in a second. Okay, Dave, if you can go ahead and start the recording.
It's going.
Okay. Are we recording?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the second item that we are taking up this morning is Monarch Orange Crematory, case number 6254-1. This is for an emergency variance. And this is in regards to rules 203 and 1147. Okay, so as I mentioned and wanted to clarify, that we have just one exhibit from the crematory, which we are marking as number 1. And then we have the proposed emergency variance conditions. Now, I have 2 copies and I'm wondering, are they exactly the same? There's been no changes?
No changes to what was sent on Thursday.
Originally, okay. All right, so that will be A, and we are moving both those items into evidence. Okay, with that, are you aware of the process of how the hearing board works? You need to make a statement, your opening statement, and because this is an emergency, we need to know also we're going for good cause first. And once we establish good cause, then we will go into the findings. So with that, go ahead and start with your opening statement.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, we do have one district staff who may be available to testify, but I don't know if they're able to come in through the Zoom to take the oath.
Day, do you have anyone else on a Zoom?
No, only one of our staff members, Todd.
Yes, that's the staff member. If he can
That's
be,
the staff member? Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
You want him
we
to
can
move
come
over?
Please. So we can administer the oath.
Okay, I moved him over.
And you will be both witnesses on this, okay?
Yes.
Let me know when you've done that, Day.
He's moved over.
Okay, can we see him? Is it possible to see him?
Yep, let me add him. Spotlight. There we go.
There we are, okay. So if you can stand and raise your right hand. Anyone who's going to be testifying? Okay, you will, okay, thank you. All right, do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will be telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and when you do testify, if you can please state and spell your name, give us your title, how long you've been with the company. And I think that's it. Okay, so with that, we can start with your opening statement, sir.
Thank you. My name is Alex Matthews. That's spelled AlexMatthews. I'm the Vice President for Crematory Operations for Foundation Partners Group and Monarch Crematory. I've been with the company since November of 2022. And the Monarch Orange Crematory was acquired in December of 21. During transition, we were unaware of the 1147 amended change until we were notified by our Inspector Justin Buncab of SQAMD on April 21st of 23, at which point we engaged our national maintenance provider for our equipment to help us deal with some significant deferred maintenance and making sure that the machines were ready for testing. And the provider experienced fairly significant delays that on April 11th, 2024, caused us to make an operational decision to switch to a local provider who could provide the services more quickly so we could meet our deadline. That provider is dealing with some supply delays from manufacturers that we believe will delay us about 6 weeks until we're able to test on June 17th, which would be after the May 15th deadline.
Okay. And from the district?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good morning, Mr. Rourke and Mr. Matthews. Josephine Lee on behalf of the executive officer. Before you today is a petition for an emergency variance seeking relief from the source testing requirements under Rule 1147 for 4 crematories located at the facility. Staff has submitted proposed conditions marked as Exhibit A, to which the facility has stipulated. For the first portion of this hearing regarding good cause, the district reserves its position subject to the evidence and testimony provided today, as well as to hear more about the timeline that facility has submitted marked Exhibit 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you can start with your first witness.
We do not have any witnesses.
Well, you actually do.
Oh, I do. Okay. Do I?
So either you can ask your colleague there questions in regards to whether it's your timeline or what occurred and why.
Oh, sure. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mark. When were you notified by Justin, the AQMD inspector, of the 1147 requirement and the May 15th deadline?
Yes, I was informed by Justin Budcab on April 21st, 2023, that the Monarch Orange Crematory was out of compliance for the Rule 1147.
Madam Chair, can we have his name and
okay,
title?
Before you make that statement, what I also need to tell you, I think I mentioned it, that we were gonna go for good cause first, and we're bifurcating the hearing. I just want you to understand that. Also, when you applied for this, were you given a document that says good cause and explains to you what we need to hear?
I'm sorry, I believe that's in front of me now. Is that
Okay.
right? Okay.
So when you're making your statements or asking your questions, if you can try to give us the information that we're requiring, and it is required, there's actually 4 items there.
Okay. Perfect.
Mr.
Will do.
Balagopalan, did you have another statement?
No, I think Mr. Mark didn't give a spelling of his name and his title.
Yes, he did.
Did he?
Yes.
I know Mr. Matthew I heard, but I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry, he
I'll
hasn't
take care
been
of it.
called yet.
Got it.
So when he's called, we can do that.
That would be me. I would call Mark Rourke, who's the manager of the Monarch Crematory.
My name is Mark Rourke, M-A-R-K. Last name is R-O-U-R-K-E. And I am the local crematory manager for Monarch Crematory Orange. That's correct.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. So the first question is it your understanding, Mark, that we will be in violation or are in violation or will be imminently of section 41701 or any rule?
Yes, as of May 6, 2024, we would be in violation of Rule 1147.
And can you speak to the circumstances leading to your discovery of that timeline and any actions you took once discovering?
Yes. So within the timeline that we've provided, it's detailed out of kind of the process for the machines at Monarch Orange Crematory to be maintenance, to have proper maintenance done and be ready for testing. It was made apparent on April 11th, 2024, that those machines were going to be delayed and testing would need to be delayed. On that same date, I reached out to, I'm gonna make sure I'm correct here, Lucas Anatato of South Coast AQMD and let him know that we were going to need to file a variance and asked his about that.
And was it your understanding prior to finding out that the maintenance required would be delayed, prior to finding that out, did you believe that the testing could go forward in a timely manner?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. We were still on plan to meet the May 6th deadline until April 11th, when we were informed by our contractor that supplies and parts would not be available in time to complete the maintenance. Okay.
Just pressing buttons, thank you. So once receiving the update and realizing that this testing requirement would need to be delayed, what actions did you take?
Informing Lucas of that variance, and then filling out the variance request form, sending that into AQMD, providing payment that was requested for the hearing, and creating a timeline to show cause for this emergency variance.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Lee, you have questions for this witness?
To clarify then, is it your testimony that the facility first had notice of that we would be unable to meet the May 6, 2024 deadline from its contractor on April 11th, 2024?
That is correct, yes.
And how soon after that notice did the facility file for this emergency variance?
Yeah, so work on the variance itself began the next day, Friday, April 12th, and that was completed and turned in on Monday, April 15th, I believe. Yes. It was submitted to AQMD the morning of Monday, April 15th.
Great. I have no further questions on good cause. Thank you.
Thank you. In regards to the timeline that we're looking at, when you were first contacted by the, I guess it was one of our inspectors, Mr. Buncab, that you were out of compliance in April of 2023. Why didn't you contact, did you file a variance then? Did you file anything then?
We didn't file a variance then. We believed that we would be able to meet the necessary requirements to get the testing done by that deadline. And then due to those delays, we were unable to meet that. As soon as we knew that our timeline, we wouldn't be able to meet our original timeline, we reached out and requested the variance.
But you waited from April to September. And you just still continued to operate?
We continued, sorry, we were, I believe, we were notified that we had until May 15th to fulfill this testing requirement. We obviously wanted to do it as early as we possibly could, but the scheduling of the initial maintenance from our provider took that amount of time, and we believed then that we would be able to get these machines ready in time. We still believe that all the way through until just recently.
Any other questions, board members? Mr. Balagopuan?
I do. Morning, Mr. Rourke. How long have you been a manager at that location?
I was hired July of 2022.
2022, okay. Now, I'm a little confused with this submittal here and the timeline. When Foundation Partners took over from Omega, correct? You mentioned, were you aware in your, oh, let me back up a little bit. In your petition, you only list, what do you call it? You attach a copy of the permit for all four, but only one page of each one. Why didn't you include the rest of the permit in the attachment?
I believe the permits are a single page. They may be front and back. The permits that we have available are just that single page.
Yeah, you checked your permits. Is that
Yes.
the case? Okay. Now, in your that's where the confusion is coming from for me. In your petition, you mentioned you will be out of compliance with H13A, which is, different from your timeline, which says H12A. Now, which is it? H12A or H13?
I believe that the rule we need to meet is the amended rule 1147 related to NOx emissions that was amended, I believe, I believe it was in 2022. And that's the testing requirement that wasn't required when the permit was initially listed, but would be retroactively required moving forward, as I understand.
All right. In your petition, in your timeline, you list 1147 H12A. Do you have a copy of the rule in front of you by any chance?
I do not.
You do not. Okay. 14A, and I have it. Do you know how long? Let me back up. How long that crematory has been operating at that location?
I do not know how long it's been operating. I know that it's been operating for over a decade prior to our acquisition under previous ownership. And I believe those crematory units certainly predate our acquisition as well.
And when you did your acquisition, do you get copies of the previous permits?
We get copies of the previous permits.
And did you look at them and look at the conditions on those permits?
Absolutely, yes.
Was there a condition to test the units?
There was a condition for initial source testing, and our understanding was that we didn't need to test again until we were made aware in 2023. So in the original permit, and again, I'm not an expert in that area, but we did not know that we had to do more testing.
Do you know when that initial testing was done? What year?
I do not off the top of my head, although I believe it would have been 5 years prior to the May 15th deadline of 2024. So I assume that it would have been what would that be? In 2019.
Okay. I think then, so you're on that 5-year timeline, basically, testing, correct?
Right.
So, and that's why you cited H12A, because it's an existing unit and you tested it before.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it had been tested before. I have worked at crematories previously, and prior to this, I had never been required to perform an additional source test after the initial permit was granted. That doesn't mean it wasn't a requirement, but we weren't aware until April of 23.
Were you aware of the rule 1147?
I was aware of the rule, not the amendment to that rule.
Okay. Because the rule, I'm looking at the rule, and the rule requires testing every 5 years. I'm not sure if it's amended.
Okay.
I'm looking at the current rule, and I don't know whether it was previously in the, so you were not aware of that 5-year requirement?
I was not.
But you had scheduled to do a test for 5 years, hence from the last test, no?
No, we had not scheduled any testing until we were notified that we would be required.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
So
that's right.
it's then you realize you need to do a test.
That's correct. And that we were already 4 years into that cycle.
Okay. All right. That clears up part of the, because I saw you listed as 13A, which is, that's the initial test. So you're asking relief from 1147 H12A, correct? For the 5-year subsequent testing.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, okay. Until June 17th.
June 17th. And your deadline is May 6th. When is the deadline to do the test?
May 6th. May 6th of 2024.
May 6th of 2024. Okay. Now, as far as okay. I was surprised when you said you only have the permit is only 1 page.
4 separate permits, 4 permits for each machine, and the permit is front and back that's hung on the wall and that's reissued. Yes, and it's 1 page with conditions including throughput as well as some other conditions.
And Well, and you didn't, this was the permit that was issued in, what year was that permit that you're referring to? Was that the old permit or the one that issued to Foundation Partners?
So we operated under the old permit, and I can't remember if it is a yearly renewal. But I believe the permit, we acquired the permit through the acquisition, and that permit had the listed requirements from 2019, allowing us to operate through. So once we found out in April of 23 that there was a new, to our knowledge, new requirement for this source test, that's when we started this process.
All right. Yeah, in your petition also, you said there were complaints. You had received, you checked yes to whether there was any complaints received. It's a question number, and I don't know if it's, bring that. Question number 13. Have you received any complaint from the public regarding operation of this equipment within the last 6 months? It's checked yes. What's the nature of the complaints and how many complaints did you get?
We are, obviously, we're not required to emit any visible emissions, and occasionally when we have overheating conditions in the unit, there will be visible emissions. I believe that, and again, I can't, perhaps Mark can speak to the frequency, but I know of only 2 complaints. One was anonymous and one was a neighbor that we spoke to and explained the situation.
So they complained directly to you?
Directly to us, yes.
Now, what's the reason you were doing all this? And so you scheduled the test, but it looks like you were what was the reason you're trying to repair the retorts?
We knew that we would have to repair the retorts. We acquired an operation that had gone through some very significant deferred maintenance through COVID. And so we acquired at the very end of the COVID pandemic, when obviously the number of deaths were overwhelming many of the operations. We took over. During that time, it was clear, this wasn't necessarily disclosed in transition, but it was clear that they were unable to perform the necessary maintenance to keep this equipment up to the standards that we would require. But that was less about the emissions and more about the actual brick retort, the fire retardant brick retort that degrades over time. And that requires significant work to tear out and rebuild the actual retort where the flame and the heat is contained. Not doing that maintenance then leads to electrical and mechanical issues as well, all of which we experienced during that process. So at different points from when we acquired the business, dealing with the operational changes, multiple machines have been down and unoperational at certain times due to this deferred maintenance, which whether it was disclosed or not in the transition, I wasn't there, but it was clear as a cremation expert when I got there that we needed to do some significant work to get these machines running properly. That process started almost as soon as I was hired, but takes time to plan and engage manufacturers. Then once we found out about this air emissions testing, we tried to, as quickly as possible, get that maintenance finished so we could get it tested with machines that were running, that were running properly.
So you, excuse me, your timeline says November 27, 2023, Unit 4 was rebuilt, and source testing was planned for February 12, 2024, but you didn't do the source test in February of 2024, right?
That's right. So the expectation was that we could get these machines, that we could get all of them fixed properly. What we kept running into were both new mechanical or electrical issues once we started working on each machine, and then also ultimately we ran into delays from our national maintenance provider, which caused us to switch to actually the original manufacturer of the machine, who's now helping us through this over the next few weeks. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So unit 4, 3 have been repaired and it's ready to be, and what is pending is the rebuild of unit 2. Is that what it is? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And when do you think unit 2 will be completed as far as estimated rebuild completion? You said April 30th?
Yes, sir. That's our estimated completion.
And June 17th. So you have already set a date for the source testing company to come out there?
Yes, that is correct. And just to go back to your point, so the initial timeline, we were hoping to have the testing done in February. Because of delays with the machines being rebuilt then it got pushed to March, then it got pushed to April, and then that's when we had to make the call of, hey, this is not going to be done by the May 6th deadline, so we needed to push it to and request the variance. So as the delays occurred for each machine, we had to kind of push back the source testing. But ultimately, yes, the source testing is scheduled for Monday, June 17th as of right now. And our source protocol was approved. So we're ready to test as soon as the machine is ready to go. The testing protocol is in place. It's been approved. It's just as soon as that machine is completed and ready to be tested, we'll be ready to go.
And did the source testing company say they can test all 4
Yes.
units the same day?
In one day, yes.
In one day.
That's right.
All right. I think that clarified, for me, some of the things that I was under misapprehension when I saw your petition. But I think, now are you now familiar with the rule, the amended rule 1147?
Yes, I am. Yes, we are.
But you don't seem to know the age of your unit, and you're aware there's a requirement in the rule to replace at some point and meet a lower PPM limit?
Yes, so we know about that requirement, and we're actively engaged with another manufacturer. That's a longer term thing, but yes, we are aware of that, and we believe these machines will meet the requirement upon source testing, but that's to be seen.
That's 60 ppm.
Yes,
you're talking about.
Yes, that's right.
But down the future, it would be 30.
30, right.
And how far back? So approximately what's the age of your unit? You don't know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can certainly get that information. It would be it would have to be less than 10 years, but more than 5. I just don't know the exact age.
Okay. All right.
And sorry, just to add, they're also able to replace burners and parts with more upgraded, like lower NOx burners and things like that. So the age of the sort of exterior equipment is not necessarily the same as the technology that's being retrofit or added. But in general, I know that the rule requires that the original equipment ages out at some point. I'm not an expert in that area, but yes, we know now that is a part of this.
So let me ask a couple more questions. Since the modification, have you observed any smoke or any complaints you have from your neighbors regarding the smoking cumulatory?
Mark is there every day, so
Not on any of the machines that have been repaired. We did get a complaint about smoke that Lucas notified me of about 3 weeks ago, of some black smoke that was quickly stabilized by our crematory operator.
Which unit?
The unit 2, right before it went under for the rebuild, the one that's currently being worked on right now.
And do you know approximately how long it lasted, or?
Generally, in speaking with my crematory operator, after I was notified by Lucas and talking with my operator, maybe 20 to 30 seconds. It's a matter of the operator getting the smoke leveled out with the air. So it about 20 to 30 seconds it lasted.
Now, my last question. It said no more than 144,000 pounds of human remains. How many cases are that approximately? I know it's average.
yeah, that's an extraordinary note. That would be, let's see, so, over probably 800 to 900 with an average weight of decedent. And we have obviously all of that information in log and it's been inspected, but roughly speaking, you'd be talking about 800 let's say 800 or so decedents per month per machine.
And are you anywhere near that? or-
No. We are not currently.
What about during COVID times? Were you?
During COVID times?
Oh, during COVID, I couldn't speak to that. I was not at the
Oh, you
location.
How many more
Oh, okay.
questions do you have, Mr. Bellicopo?
That was my last question,
Okay.
actually.
Mr. Matthews, you had stated that you have worked at other crematories, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
For how
Yes.
many years?
I worked,
Just total, just total.
sure, 20, so that would be 6 years roughly.
You're 6 years total.
That's
Okay.
right.
Were they in Southern California?
Yes.
Okay, so, and your title was the same?
No, I had a different title at the
What-
time.
What did you do at the other crematories?
I was director of operations for a crematory.
Okay, so at the other ones, you did not have any knowledge of South Coast Air Quality Management District having required permits at the other locations?
Of course, I knew about the permit
Okay,
requirements.
so how did you not know it here?
I did not know, at the time, we weren't required to do emissions tests for those older machines that had already been in place and had been permitted. Those permits would be renewed. And as I understand it,
However, excuse me for interrupting you.
course.
As of April 21st, you were notified by AQMD that you did have to come into compliance of those rules. That's a year ago.
that's right. Yes.
So to me, that's a very long time for you not to address this issue of being out of compliance and coming to the AQMD and applying for a variance. I think this should have happened long ago.
As I understand it, we weren't out of compliance at that time that.
Well, he was telling you on April 21st, as stated in this timeline, that you were out of compliance for Rule 1147 H12A with the deadline of May 2024. So you were notified, and this is your document that we're reading it off of, Exhibit number 1.
I'm sorry. I believe this is a misunderstanding. As my understanding is that were we not to complete the source test by that deadline, that we would then be out of compliance.
The way that this is worded, he was telling you then that you were out of compliance. He's not.
I can see
Is he
that.
here? Okay. And the other thing is, your operator, I think many of our questions would have been also to the operator. It would have been nice to have had that person here so that we could ask them questions as well. But
Okay.
I don't feel that we're getting the full story here, especially when we're talking about how long it took you to contact AQMD and actually file a variance or for a variance.
Again, you're right, the way that this is written, and I see my understanding, and I spoke with Justin, was that he was notifying us that we had a requirement to test by this date, or else we would fall out of compliance, and we believed we would be able to meet that date until recently, at which point we asked for the additional 6 weeks.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. My concern is that if they notified you and you had a discussion with an AQMD inspector in April, a year ago, that you would have been at least more diligent about contacting us and either asking questions or following through with filing a variance
I
at
understand.
that point.
We believed that we would meet the deadline and missed it by 6 weeks.
I'm not talking about the deadline. I'm talking about notification to the AQMD.
That we wouldn't be able to meet that
Right.
deadline. I understand, yeah. We did not.
That you were rolling down, the time, and to me, that was way too long of a time.
Okay.
Any other questions, or Mr. Pearman?
We'll ask AQMD about what might be an error in their language of being out of compliance back in April 2023. If that's a mistake, then that clears things up a lot. The permit mentioned 4 retorts. Your time only mentions 3. So explain what's happened with number 1, apparently.
Unit 1 does not require a full rebuild at the time, but there are other maintenance items that need to be addressed on that machine prior to the testing.
What prevented you from doing source testing on one completed unit as opposed to waiting until all four are completed?
That was at the recommendation of the testing company, our source testing company, AQ Environmental. They recommended doing all four at once as opposed to one at a time.
But following the recommendation means you're going to miss the deadline as to 3 units that you could have source tested before the deadline, correct?
Yeah, I can't speak to their reasoning. I'm not
It's
an
your
expert.
company. Why did you choose not to do that? You could have complied, you're telling me. You didn't, only because your source company said, don't bother.
I wouldn't say that they indicated don't bother. They just recommended that all four at once is a better strategic thing than to doing one at a time. That was the advice we were given from them.
Yeah, but you got to make the business decision. I'm reading this, you could have done the source testing on 3 of them by the deadline, correct?
Not necessarily. Like I said, the rebuilds were done, but there still is other maintenance to be completed before the testing can be done.
Okay, well, unit 4 was completed in December of 2023. You still doing maintenance to allow you to source test? I mean, your timeline says completed.
The rebuild, yes, sir. So the rebuild was completed, but there is additional maintenance. That was 5 months ago. We do quarterly maintenance in which other repairs are identified and need to be done.
But if you had source tested like in January before the next quarterly maintenance, you would have satisfied the rule well in advance.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that testing date wasn't in our timeline. We still felt at that time that we would be able to meet the May 6th deadline with the maintenance for all the machines prior to.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Did you want to make any other statement? Mr. Matthews, yourself? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, just to the point, yes, absolutely. Had we been able to anticipate that we would not be able to meet this testing deadline for all 4 machines as recommended in time, we would have acted differently. In this case, we know, having changed our manufacturer and working with them as quickly as we can, we know that we can meet this by the proposed deadline. And so thank you for your consideration.
Okay, do you have questions for this witness, Ms. Lee?
No questions, but I do, if we go to the second part regarding the substantive findings, I do have witnesses to clarify regarding compliance and which provisions and the what triggers the testing deadlines.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pearman.
Well, I think that question is relevant to the good cause. So if they have a witness on that, I'd like to hear it, not wait till the
Sure.
second phase.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So can you bring your witness forward, please?
Sure. The district will call Lucas. Mr. Lucas Tato.
Hello. All right. Hi, my name is Lucas Anotado. That's LucasAnotado. Air Quality Inspector 1.
Thank you, Mr. Anatano. And did you take the oath today?
Yes, I did.
And how many years have you been working in the compliance staff at the district?
Less than 1, approximately 8 months.
Are you familiar with the facility, Monarch Orange Crematory?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the equipment that's at issue, the 4 permitted crematory units?
Yes.
Could you just give clarification as to compliance's interpretation of recently amended Rule 1147 13A, which requires to conduct initial source test within 24 months?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. What are you asking for? Because you kind of stated the rule.
Okay, so maybe I'll I'll clarify again. Was Rule 1147 amended in May 2022?
That is correct.
And the recently amended provisions added H13A, and does that require an owner operator of an in-use unit to conduct an initial source test within 24 months of the rule amendment date, which was May 6, 2022.
Correct.
And so that deadline 24 months after would be May 6, 2024.
Correct.
And is that what compliance has communicated to your understanding that compliance has communicated to the facility would be the deadline by which they would need to source test their in-use units, these 4 crematories?
Yes.
And are you familiar with H12A?
Yes.
And what does that require?
H12A, well, it depends, looking at the rule now, it depends on the BTU rating of the equipment. Based off this facility, it is the subsection 8, 12A for less than 10 million BTU for each of their crematories. So that requires testing each 5 years.
Conducting,
Conducting the source testing every 5 years for each piece of equipment.
yes. And is it your understanding that this is a new provision that was added in the 2022 amendments?
Yes.
And so the H13A, would it be fair to say H13 provides a start date to the source testing, and H13 then creates a schedule for subsequent source testing?
Yes.
Great, thank you. No further questions for this witness.
Okay, Mr. Matthews, do you have questions for this witness?
No, thank you.
Okay, board members, do you have questions for this witness? Mr. Pearman?
Now, to clear things up, the timeline was clearly wrong in a number of instances. So thank you very much.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Actually, I do actually, I beg to differ. I think he just muddied up the timeline now by saying what he did. So let me ask the question. H13A, do you have the rule in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you look at H13A, oh, let me back up. When was the last, when were you at the facility? Did you do a physical inspection at the facility?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't remember the date off the top of my head. I believe I visited most recently at the beginning of this month of April.
And did you ask them for records on their last horse test?
No.
Did you? Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I also have an engineering witness who does have, who can testify to the source testing history.
Okay. So you don't know, you didn't know it when you, that they have done a previous horse test as per the as Mr. Rourke said, the condition on the permit.
Yes, I did not, I was not aware that they had conducted a previous source test due to the availability of the records based off of the change of operator.
Okay. Did you look into your inspection files from the previous inspector's visit?
Yes.
Nothing was there?
No.
Okay. Let's look at H13A, which was referred to. And that was in the petition, and I think it was mentioned, but in their timeline, they refers to H12A. So my question is going to be, which is more appropriate? Let's look at H13A, and let's keep it 13A and look at 13B for a second. So can you look at H13B and tell me oh, can you just read that if you don't mind?
Yes, it states 13B that you use the results of a South Coast AQMD approved source test with South Coast AQMD approved source test protocol conducted between the applicable frequency required in paragraph H12 and May 6, 2022, and establish the date of this source test as the basis for subsequent source testing frequency. The source test and protocol must still be representative of the current operation of the equipment, or a new source test protocol will be required to be submitted pursuant to H1.
Okay, so so that says, because it's 13A or 13B, right? According to H13A applies or 13B, okay? And if you look at 13B, which I had you read, then it refers to H12, correct?
Yes.
And H12A says conduct source testing every 5 calendar years.
Correct.
From their last, whatever baseline they did, whenever they did the last test.
Correct.
But you don't know when they did the last test, and we'll get from the engineer. So I think appropriately, my opinion, they listed in their timeline H12A based on the last source test, and then they have to do a subsequent test 5 years from that date. You know, do you disagree, or you think it's 13A that applies?
If there is a prior source test, then I do believe that 12A would be applicable.
Okay, good. Then we'll get confirmation if there's a price or something. And you're saying there was nothing in your records, in your files, to indicate any sources submitted prior?
Not since the change of ownership in 2022.
No, the previous owner file.
I was not aware of the previous owner.
Okay, you didn't know there was a change of operator?
No,
You didn't look up in the system?
I did not see any documentation that would indicate there was a change of operator.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Okay, you stated that you didn't know that there was a change of ownership, and they did not volunteer that either, I'm assuming.
No, it did not come up.
Okay, all right. I think that's all we had for this witness. Thank you very much. And Mr. Palagopal?
Yeah, when you looked up the change of the new operator, and you look up do you have a copy of the permit and when it was issued?
The previous owner or the
No,
current?
new one, the current one, you said that's the one you looked at, right?
Correct.
Do you know the issue date on that one?
Do you have a copy? I have a screenshot.
They only provided one page, which is
Yes.
unfortunate. There's several pages normally to a permit. And normally the last page will indicate when it was issued. Do you have that in front of you?
It is 4/15/2022.
So 2022, that implies then either it's a new unit or it was a change of operator, right?
Correct.
Okay, it didn't register to you that it's not a new unit and probably was a change of operator when you looked at it?
No.
Okay, all right, I hope you do now.
Okay, any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, did you want to bring your other witness, Ms. Lee?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The district would like to call Mr. Todd Iwata from Engineering and Permitting.
Okay, and we acknowledge that he is on via Zoom, and you have taken the oath. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay, please spell your name for us and your title.
Yeah, first name is Todd, Todd. Last name is Iwata. I am a senior air quality engineer in the mechanical team, and I've been with the district since November 1989.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, do you have questions for this witness?
No, I do not.
Ms. Lee?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Iwata. Are you familiar with this facility, the Monarch Orange Crematory?
I've never visited the facility. I've never approved any permits for the facility. I just did the research last week in preparation for this hearing.
Thank you. And can you confirm the issuance date of the permits that issue the G683898889091, the 4 permits? What was the issuance date for those 4 permits?
February 20th, 2024.
Thank you. And what was that most recent change from what we heard earlier of the 2022 issuance date?
Change of ownership from Omega Society to Monarch Crematory.
Thank you. And are you familiar with Rule 1147, which was amended in May 2022?
Correct.
Thank you. And is it your understanding that the H12A 5 calendar year repeat source testing requirement was added in the 2022 amendment?
Correct.
So prior to that, a facility would need to do a source test, and there was no explicit requirement for these cyclical, I guess, retesting, unless it was in the permit?
Okay. Can I give a little bit of history regarding 1147?
Yes.
Okay. So previous to this amended version, crematories had to meet 60 ppm NOx. And then when it was amended in May 6, 2022, the limit went down to 30 ppm. Operators who emit more than 1 pound per day of NOx will have to test every 5 years, and that's in H12. I did some calculations. It looks like if Monarch operates more than 5.5 hours on 2 of them and 6.25 hours per day on the other 2, that they would exceed 1 pound per day. Thus, they would have to test every 5 years.
Thank you. That is a very helpful background regarding the every 5-year requirements. The board members had asked earlier, and I believe you had heard, were these crematories, these 4 crematories, source tested prior at any time?
Correct. They were source tested on the previous owners, Omega Society, in October 2016, and the other 2, March 2013.
Could you provide the years, Mr. Iwata? Oh, sorry, 2016 and
2013. October and March, respectively.
Thank you. And under the prior iteration of 1147, there were no requirements for retesting at any period of those years.
Correct. Just the initial source test, but not a follow-up test. Correct.
Yes. And then under H13A, that requires, would it be fair to say that that sets out when these in-use units it sets out the start date for a source test. I believe the language is establish the date of this source test as the basis for subsequent source testing frequency. Is that a fair summary of H13?
Yeah, I see that in the latter part of H13A. Keep in mind, these are for in-use units. So these are units that never were tested.
Yes, but given that this is a facility that had not retested within the required frequency of 5 years under H12, since arguably that wasn't a requirement prior to 2022, is it fair to say that their H13 would be needed to establish the date for subsequent source testing frequency?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions for this witness.
Okay. Board members? Mr. Pearman?
So thank you. I just want to be clear then. So as of April 2023, they were in compliance with then applicable source test rules because there was none for a retest of the existing units. And the next timeline for them to comply would be by May 6, 2024 under H13A. Is that correct?
Well, they were tested initially in 2013 and 2016. So I'm not too sure if the 5 years should be from those dates.
Well, but the 5-year didn't come in until May 2022, correct?
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Dr. Abraham?
Yeah, I'm not sure who can answer this, but so when the rule changes, do all the permittees receive communication from the district about these changes or any requirements or when their next out of compliance date might be?
From my understanding, so when rules are amended, naturally there's workshops, public workshops. Maybe somebody from the crematory agency would be present and maybe he or she would inform all the crematories, but there's not really a notification that goes out stating the changes, I believe. So it's up to the operator to be aware of all of our rules and regulations.
And with the implementation of these types of changes, is there any grandfathering that occurs, or is there ever a window or a time period to come into compliance when a rule changes?
Yes, offhand, I recall reading in various regulating rules that there is some time frame to come into compliance.
Okay, and we don't know what that time frame is, right?
Well, may I ask a redirect to clarify, hopefully to answer your question, Dr. Abraham?
Yes, Ms. Lee.
So H13 requires a source test no later than 24 months after date of this rule amendment, which was May 6, 2022. Is that correct, Mr. Iwata?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Iwata, there are normally associations for organizations like this, correct?
Correct. Many industries do have an organization or an
Mhm.
association, correct?
The AQMD normally reaches out to those associations to make them aware of any changes in regards to rules, amendments, whatever their constituency is going to face normally. Do you know if there
so-
was an outreach, at least in the sense in writing, that was sent to an association like this? Do you have any knowledge of that?
I do not. I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, I do know, I did dabble in rule writing, and when we're trying to propose an amendment, obviously we work with all the stakeholders,
Right.
representatives, of course, and they're notified then.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Belagopan.
Yes, Mr. Iwata. So you're sure that there was no language in the previous version prior to May 6, 2022 to do testing every 5 years?
Correct.
It was only added in the May 6th then amendment.
2022, correct.
Okay, all right. Then in that case, then correctly is 13A, and I thought there was, so when they said in their timeline 12A, they are incorrect then.
Yes, yes.
So it should be 13A.
Right, that is the most recent requirement, the 24 months after May 6th, 2022.
Testing every 5 years. Okay. All right, then I thank you for the clarification. So.
Sure.
Mr. Pierman, did you have a question?
Finally got it straightened out. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other witnesses? There was one other one that you were going to present, Ms. Lee?
No, no further witnesses.
Okay, all right. All right, so with that, are there any members of the public, Madam Clerk, that have raised their hands and want to either provide testimony or ask? Okay. All right, with that, we have listened to the witnesses on both sides. I believe now we can go ahead and closing statements. And we will start with Mr. Matthews. And please keep in mind that you're wanting to meet the criteria of good cause. That's on that sheet that they provided to you.
Yes, thank you for taking the time today and for hearing us. I have a little less than 6 years experience in this industry, and this is new. I'm learning these requirements, and I appreciate the clarification that we got today, and we certainly do understand moving forward. We look forward to being in compliance as quickly as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was the district's intention to clarify that A 1147H13A was the applicable provision that petitioner is or may be in violation of, given the May 6, 2024 source testing deadline and petitioner's testimony that they had a good faith understanding that they could comply with that deadline, and did not get notice until April 11th, 4 days before filing this petition, that they would not be able to meet that deadline. The district has no opposition to a finding of good cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Board members, anybody want to start? Mr. Chairman?
I find good cause that it was confusing at first, but I think that once, they reasonably thought they'd meet May 6th. And once they realized that in early April, they got a variance requested in 4 days. I could quibble with the fact they didn't do the source testing on each unit or crematoria as it came up, but I've seen other instances where facilities do try if you would bundle source testing across different equipment at one time. So that seems to be an industry practice. So I'm not going to criticize that. So I would find good cause for the emergency variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, I too can find good cause, and I think I was confused in the but I think it's clarified that language was only added in the amendment in 2022 to do the testing every 5 years. So with that, I think when they were notified, that they, May 6th is when the deadline. I think they very quickly applied for this emergency variance. They're not in violation yet, but they will be, because they will not meet the deadline due to the repairs there and maintenance that they're doing on those units. And like Mr. Freeman said, it does make some sense to do all the testing at one time. It's more efficient, more cost effective, and so forth. So they to find good cause, they're in violation. They're not in violation, but they are imminently in violation because of the May 6th deadline. The circumstances could not have reasonably been avoided. Well, that it's sort of, but I think to the credit, I think they saw that they actually should do the repairs to the retorts. They were in pretty bad shape, and they could have done it sooner, but they didn't take over this operation until 2020, whenever they did the change ownership in 2022. So it could not, it reasonably could have been avoided, but I think I can find that they could not have reasonably avoided it. And then they exercised diligence in filing for the petition as soon as they knew that they will not meet the deadline, May 6th, and denial of the variance will have an unreasonable and unavoidable impact to the petitioner and to the people who may need to cremate at scheduled cremation and so forth. So, and with that, yes, I think I can find also the four findings for good cause, I believe, can be met.
Anyone else want to make a comment? Mr. Ali?
No, a good cause is established. Thank you.
I'm having problems with the fact that once a company takes over, they do their due diligence in finding out, asking every single question that's going to affect them monetarily. And when that doesn't occur, you get surprises like this. I don't know who's at fault. It's just, the fact that ultimately it's the public who has to pay for it if your equipment is not running properly. And that is also my concern. But having listened to the evidence and the statements from both the AQMD personnel who clarified a lot of things for us, and thank you for that, as well as the testimony and the documents that were presented, I will go ahead and go along with my colleagues and find good cause as well. Okay, so with that, did you want to make the motion?
Motion, unless you want to. No. Okay, so I would like to make the motion that we find good cause here in the matter of Monarch Orange Crematorium Facility 1963339, case number 6254-1, based on what we've heard today, that that they will be in imminent violation of the rule that was previously stated, and that it really was not avoidable given the circumstances with the vendor and I guess the timeline that was presented. And that 4 days after they found this out, they filed with the district. And it seems like there will be a financial impact. There won't be any excess submissions without their granting, but I think we can move forward in good faith to hear the case. So I move for good cause.
You have a second?
Ali
Second,
seconds.
we just clarify the timeline as amended since they had those errors in the first paragraph. Thank you.
As amended. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, Mr. Ali, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
Mr. Pearman?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes,
And I also vote aye, so it's unanimous that we can go into the merits of the case. The only thing is, it's already 11:10, and we didn't take a morning break, so we can do a 45-minute lunch, or we can just go ahead and finish this off and then go to lunch afterwards. What's the pleasure of the board?
take a short 10-minute break, 10-minute break, and then
Okay.
come back and finish it,
We
yeah.
can do that. All right. So we're off the clock for 10 minutes. He hasn't responded yet. Well, I think he's gonna go ahead and leave.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello?
Okay, are you gonna stay for this?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, let's go ahead and resume. Let's see. Yeah, we're back on the record. Okay. Did we want to start deliberation on the,
We have to do the merits part, right?
oh, I'm so sorry,
It's
yes.
gonna be brief. but we have
Yes,
to do it.
yes. Okay, so this is the second part of the hearing. As I mentioned earlier, it does get bifurcated and now we're going after the 6 findings. Do you have a copy of the 6 findings? It's normally on the backside of the cause. Okay, so if you can address the 6 findings within you so that you understand it as well and we understand where you're at regarding the 6 findings. Okay, so you can go ahead and start your opening statement.
Should I redo my name and
Yep,
everything?
yes.
Okay. My name is Alex. Okay. All right. Alex Matthews, Vice President of Crematory Operations for Foundation Partners Group. We are requesting this variance because we will be in imminent violation of Rule H13A beginning on May 6th. We're asking for an extension to comply until June 17th due to conditions beyond our reasonable control. We were notified April 23rd of 2023 that we would need to comply by this original date. And due to manufacturer delays, we have been unable to schedule that source testing in time, which is necessitating the extension. We would not, are not operating out of current permit requirements and will not in the meantime. We will also be weekly sending to South Coast AQMD date and hours of operation during this variance time, temperature of operation for our secondary retort chambers, the amount of human remains in pounds processed by the facility, as well as consistent updates about the final rebuild and maintenance schedules prior to pre-testing and source testing for all the crematories. We will continue, we will not bring in any additional decedents or from outside of our core business, people who have come to us requesting this service through our Omega Cremation brand, which we have done in the past, but we won't be doing that until this source test is finished. Yes, I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you. I would just like to add that the district, in consultation with petitioner, has submitted proposed conditions marked Exhibit A, which does require reporting, as well as while we don't anticipate excess emissions, if it does turn out as demonstrated by the source test that the NOx limits exceed the 60 ppm, then excess emission fees will be required to be paid. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I should say the district is not opposed to the granting of this emergency variance.
Thank you. Okay. And board members, let's start. You don't have any other statement, Mr. Matthew, that you wanted either yourself or Mr. Rourke to make? Okay. All right. And you don't have any questions for them, Ms. Lee?
Questions. Thank you.
I do have a question for
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Rourke.
Go ahead.
And I think you mentioned there have been several instances when the public has complained due to smoking conditions. And I was going to propose a condition and see if it's agreeable to both parties that in the event you do have another complaint, that you inform AQMD, immediately of any incidents when there's, your retort is not working properly. Is that something that you're willing to do? And I was going to ask Ms. Lee if that's a condition that's appropriate.
Yeah, there's no objections to add a condition. Would it be, well, I would just like to clarify, board member, that I believe typically the facility is notified of complaints from our agency. And so would it be that if the facility is separately notified?
Yeah, and I
that
think
they
we heard
contact-
testimony that they were, the neighbors complained to them, not to AQMD.
I
so-
see, yes.
Yeah.
Then I think that that would be fair. Thank you.
That's
Okay.
correct. The overheating conditions that can lead to visible emissions are rare. We haven't had many, but we would be more than happy to self-report should that happen during this period. Absolutely.
Okay. And I think it happened 3 weeks ago, according to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, that one was reported to AQMD. Lucas reported me of that one. That one was 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Or referred from
Yep.
AQMD.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we are amending and adding a number 7 regarding public complaints and that they will be self-reporting to the AQMD. And hopefully there are no reports from the AQMD either. So with that, any other amendments, Mr. Pearman?
No, just a comment. The witness said he wanted a variance to June 17th, but that'll be on the regular variance request. This would be the sooner of 30 days or the hearing on the regular, which is now set for May 14th.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Okay, so any other questions or any, I'm sorry, deliberation statements?
And,
Mr. Gopal, I can see you have one.
yeah, no, I think when they come back for I think it's scheduled May 14th for the short variance, that they provide maybe the copies of the, it's on one page, the copies of the permit, I think if you don't have it, you probably should have, all the relevant pages, or you can go online and get it. And, so it's complete in the package, when you submit your short variance request, that you have those permits,
Yes, sir. No problem. We'll make sure we have them.
I would also suggest that you bring your operator, because there are questions that I'm sure that the board members had and I had regarding the operations.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. What's that they bring?
The
one?
operator, he had mentioned the operator earlier, so I'd like to.
I thought the manager of the crematory would know about the operation as well as in.
That he had deferred a question or an answer, I should say, to the operator. And so if there's questions that we had that they could not answer, I think it would be appropriate for the operator to show up. I don't think that's a real difficult request. And they're agreeing.
Yes, we can make him available. Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else, board members? Okay, if not, we can go to closing statements. And Mr. Matthews, if you can go ahead and address the 6 findings as they affect you.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, is that the Health and Safety Code 42352? Is that the 6 findings you're referring to, or the Exhibit A?
It's, you should have a document there on your desk that says 6 findings.
This one. Thank you. Got it. Yes. So as I said, we'll be in imminently out of compliance, and we're requesting an extension to be in compliance from the May 6th deadline due to conditions beyond our reasonable control, due to manufacturer delays and late notification. There will be there will be no additional emissions exceeding any permit limits that are currently applicable, and the operations, in order to continue to provide cremation disposition for the members of the public who engage our services, are necessary, but we will do everything we can to just service our existing client base and not add additional cremations during this time until the testing is complete. And please let me know if I've missed anything, but I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lee?
Thank you. Subject to the proposed conditions marked Exhibit A, the district is unopposed to the granting of the emergency variance until the scheduled short variance hearing on May 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pearman.
I didn't hear it. Did they agree that these are stipulated conditions?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Bellica-Plon?
Just, and if you give me a minute, I wanted to, because if you're smoking and there's an opacity, then you have to report, pay fees based on the opacity. So I wanted to add some language, not just on the 60 ppm NOx, but if there's opacity exceedance, then you report that and pay fees accordingly also. So let me look up the rule real quick if on that, on 303.
Yeah, real quick.
And maybe this, we can wait to the regular, okay. Yeah, there we can.
Yes.
Time,
Yeah.
because if there's between now and then, yeah, okay, I can do
Good
that.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, board members? Okay, so we can, and there are no members of the public that have a request to be heard? Okay. All right. All right, with that, we can
Deliberation.
deliberate. Anything else? Did you want to make a
I
comment?
can start
on?
and just say that I think that they've met the 6 findings based on everything that's been presented in the previous and then here, Mr. Bellica.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Bellica-Plon.
I was going to add the emergency variance appropriate where good cause exists, and we went through that and found good cause. 6 findings can be made, and I will say again, I think Mr. O'Rourke went through that, but they will be imminent in violation of the 1147 H13B and 2 non-compliances beyond the reasonable control, and they're taking every steps to rectify that and come into compliance. There will be no benefit in shutting them down. The harm to petitioner outweighs the benefit to air quality. We don't expect emissions greater than 60 ppm, but from the NOx, but that'll remain to be seen based on the test. So, in a way, this is an essential service to the community, cremation. So, so that there will be benefit, the harm to petitioner and the public outweighs the benefit of air quality in this instance. The petition is given consideration curtailing operations. So I think Mr. Rourke mentioned they won't take any more new cases beyond what they have. But they have a very generous permit limit. So I think they're not meeting, they're doing that, so I don't think that's an issue. And the petition will reduce excess emission to the maximum extent possible. And as long as they don't create the situation where they're smoking, that create, that's the best outcome, or and sometimes the units don't run the afterburner sufficiently hot enough before they charge the crematory, and that causes sometimes overloading and some problems. And they will monitor, I think there are conditions to monitor emissions and so forth. So that I think the 6 findings, has been made, and I agree. And the last part of the thing, that the violation will be remedied during the period of the emergency variance or under further variance relief. So they are requesting further variance relief by requesting the short variance. So all 3 findings can be made to grant the emergency variance.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, board members? I believe I can also make the 6 findings. It's unfortunate that, as was mentioned earlier, that, and I understand on an economic basis why you had to hold them back and not address the maintenance until you had all of them ready to go. But I would have liked to have seen them come online, and you wouldn't have had to. You would have been in compliance with those. So, but in any case, you're on a good path here. You're going to be coming back to us in a few, let's see. You're coming back on May 14th. So hopefully we'll hear some good things by then. All right. So with that, any other comments? All right. We can make a motion.
The motion. Should I try? Okay, so in the matter of Monarch Orange Crematory, case number 6254-1 for facility ID 196339, located at 1577 North Main Street, Orange 92867. I move that we grant the emergency and short variance.
No, just-
Emergency variance, short will do next time. Emergency variance commencing today, April 23rd, and continuing through June 17th, or till the next hearing date, May 14th.
Actually, for 30 days until the
Right.
notice hearing, which is scheduled for May 14th
Whichever
is
comes
out,
first. So
whichever occurs
May
first.
14th, the next hearing date, or 30 days, whichever comes first.
Yes.
For rules 1147, and permit conditions for permits to operate G 683898890 and 91. And that was the equipment. Let's see. With the stipulated conditions as presented, Exhibit A with the amendments that were provided today. That, Madam Clerk, amendment, correct, okay. And that the petitioner will pay the fees as outlined and stated in the stipulated agreement. And they'll notify the clerk of the board when compliance is achieved.
And I was just going to add is Rule 1147 you mentioned, but H13 A.
Okay, so 1147 H13
A.
A.
All right, second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Does it start May 6th?
The variance?
Well, it starts.
It
today.
starts
goes
today.
30 days or until the regular hearing on the board.
Right.
No, they're not out of compliance yet. That's okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, imminent.
yeah, imminent.
Imminent.
The variance should not, can it not start on May, starting May 6th, because that's when they'll technically.
I would just go ahead and follow the verbiage of the rule, which says either they are out of compliance or in imminent danger of being out of compliance, and take it at that and start it as of today. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? We had a second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How do you vote, Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes.
Mr. Pearman?
Aye.
Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
Mr. Ali?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. And thank you very much. That concludes this case. It is unanimous. And when we come back on the 14th of May, as stated, I hope we'll have more good news. And like I said before, bring that other person, your operator, so we can have a full understanding of what's going on. And thank you to the staff, Ms. Lee, and your engineers. Thank you for attending and taking the time. Thank you. All right. That takes care of that one. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ali is not going to be participating in this case. All right, so therefore we have before us Beta Offshore Operating LLC, a case number 5855-7. This is for a status report, and it was also regarding, I can't read that. Yeah, modification and an extension. This was regarding rules 203, 1100, 1110.2, 1134, 2004, 2012, and 3002. And so we also have some exhibits to mark. And please correct me, Madam Clerk, if we didn't get a chance to go over this, but I'm pretty sure following the minute order, I have the stipulation starting with number 8. Do you agree with that, Madam Clerk? That's okay. Okay. Now, I received 2 declarations for Jeff Ortloff. Did everybody else receive 2 or just the one? Just the one? Or did you also receive 2? Just the one. I don't know.
Included the previous.
Right.
December 7th.
Okay.
Which already was.
Right. And I don't know why we got it again, but anyway, so this is going to be number 9, the declaration. And the proposed conditions. That's what I don't have. I don't have any proposed conditions. Okay. I only have the stipulation and the exhibits, the declarations. I don't have another document after that. Okay, so the findings and decisions then will be number 10. And we are entering those into evidence. Okay. All right, and since this is a report, okay, from the public. Mr. Balagopalan? Okay. That's okay. All right, so we will mark those as HB. HB1. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, yes, entered into evidence. All right, so with that, we can go ahead and start deliberation. Anybody want to start?
Well,
Mr. Pear-
we've had this company before. For the incident with, I think a ship dragging a undersea line or something like that.
Right.
So, it really was totally out of their control, et cetera. And, it's a consent calendar item stipulated by both sides. So I find that we can grant the variance, or the staff report is appropriate and the conditions proposed that we enter today are appropriate.
I agree with you, Mr. Pearman. It was unfortunate what happened to them, but I remember discussing also with them if they were going to be able to get their monies back for all of the costs that they're incurring. And I hope that they do. I don't know that they have yet, but I know that they did file for that. But, as was stated, it was not due to any fault of theirs that all of this did occur. So with that, those are my statements, Mr. Balakopoulou.
Well, I don't know if you recall, I did oppose it only not on the sort of the merit of this merit of the situation, only because of the filing. They should have, I felt they should file for a AOC, not, even though I think Mr. Payman did add a condition to notify EPA as part of the granted variance. Nevertheless, that is something that should have been done upfront, well, and I still am going to oppose it, only or just on principle, maybe that this should have been filed as a AOC, and especially because of the way the rule is written for what was that rule again? 1183, which delegate the authority to the district, and 518.2 is mentioned. Though Mr. Tether did say 518.2 is may, and I don't want to get into the legal argument on that, but I still feel that this should have been notification is one aspect of it to EPA, but there's other aspects in the AOC that are not being met, and I don't want to go through all of that. But however, I think after this, I'll share. I think it's several years ago when we had a general meeting. I think attorneys from Earthwatch provided a critic of the district's hearing board process, and I had the clerk make some copies, and I don't want to make this as part of the exhibit, but I'll share with everybody.
Okay.
Specifically, they talked about the AOC on that.
Well, okay, and I didn't get a chance to read your comments. In those comments and questions to the district, did you pose that question to them in regarding the AOC?
Yes, I did. And
what was their
I think
response?
Mr. Tether pointed out the 518.2 says may, not shall, and he's right. And also he pointed out there was a condition 23 that Mr. Pearman added to notify EPA of the variance, which they said they did. So
which they felt satisfied the question then.
I mean,
not to you, but
that so the proper procedure is to do the notification before, not after the hearing. And it's a 45-day for EPA to comment. So that was not done, but that's not the only component in the AOC. That's a critical component to notify EPA, but there's also the offsetting the emissions. We don't have the offset bank, but there's either ERCs or RTCs we've been allowing. And then also, some comments regarding compliance with the NESHAP or any federal regulation, and also health and safety and so forth. So a lot of those things were not addressed because it was not brought up as AOC, it's just as a regular variance. So that's the reason why, I'm still going to be on the record to say I oppose it.
Well, what in that case, what I think concerns me is that yet they still had an agreement with both sides that, and they're aware of the AOC and what the parameters of the AOC are, but yet legal went ahead and want to agree to go forward with this. And
part of the reason I brought it up and bring it up as issue, also I wanted to bring it to the attention of the permitting group. There is such a rule, and that's something they should be looking at also in compliance. So, and maybe hopefully that management, they're listening, maybe come up with a policy memo regarding how to handle this type of facilities if they're delegated to AQMD, especially on the permitting side, which I haven't.
So that, and also especially because EPA has oversight, and especially when it comes to the AOCs, that kind of is like a red flag that goes up over there, and they kind of go over that more than one that doesn't have an AOC. So that concerns me also, and why that they're opening themselves up to not only criticizing from EPA, but also looking into this even more. So I'm concerned about that as well. Why they didn't do that, and not knowing exactly, we can't ask them because we decided that we wanted to go ahead and go on consent. Are they coming back to us, Rosalinda? In regards to the AOC? Well, obviously, legal felt that was adequate. So normally, if both parties are agreeing and they don't have an issue, and it comes before us and we haven't voiced an issue other than what Mr. Balagopalan just did, and he also did it in writing. Okay, so I have, in my mind, I want to follow what the legal is already going to be responsible for also, that they agreed to this. So in that sense, I don't have an issue. Any other comments? Okay. All right. So we can go ahead and vote on this. If we have let's go ahead and go through the motion. I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay.
All right, and this is just basically to accept the status report as well as the modification and the extension regarding rules 203, 1100, 1110.2, 1134, 2004, 2012, and 3002. And this is in regards to Beta Offshore Operating LLC located at 111 West Ocean Boulevard in Long Beach, 90802. This is case number 5855-7, facility number 16603. And I move that we do accept the status report and the modification and the extension, along with the conditions that have been placed within this and the order. Mr. Pearman.
And I'll just add implicit in your motions that we, since it is modifying this, we continue to find that they met the conditions required for the issuance of the variance. Because even though it's called the status report, they are modified.
Yeah, I accept that. Okay.
That I second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item, on the motion? Okay,
I think just for, I think one condition was remove 13, so I don't know if they, whether you want to, renumber them to 22. I think they're 22 conditions because one was removed from 23. So that's the,
Okay, all right. So this is in regards to equipment description of the internal combustion engine, the selective catalytic reduction unit, and the gas turbines and the urea injection system. As stated before, the rules have to do with the 2003, 1100, 1110.2, 1134, 2004, 2012, and 3002. And let's see, what am I missing? Anything else? I think that's it. So that is my motion.
I renew my second.
and I'll be asking for the word held.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we can take a vote. And how do you vote, Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
Mr. Pearman?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan?
No.
Okay, and it's 3-1. Mr. Ali is not here, and it still passes. So the motion passes, and that is the end of our items for the day. And unless there's anything else, if there's any general comments from the public, not having to do with this case, but just in general, do you have any? Okay, all right. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, board members.
I don't know if you're interested in that.
You wanted this back, right, Rosalinda?
That's what you're talking about.